Hello guys. It's been a while. Hey Damien, what's up, man? Nate, good to see you guys. Appreciate you stopping by, despite my infrequent streaming. We'll see how long I stream. I expect to be here for at least like 2 hours. New mic? Yeah, I do have a new mic. Should be a bit more clear. It's no longer a big, fat, old headset mic. It is an actual mic with an arm now. And finally, a wireless headset. But yeah, let me know how it sounds, because obviously new mic and new headset and all that stuff. So let me know how the sound is. And I also upped the stream in quality. It should be in at least 2K now, hopefully. So let me know how it all looks, feels, and yeah, I'll try and adjust if something looks off. Yeah, I tried fiddling. It is where I want it to be outside of streaming. So hopefully it doesn't, it doesn't sound weird outside of, a more clear voice. Because I had an old mic before, very old. So it was still pretty good. Like I had a friend that, does have some knowledge about mics and stuff, and the other one I had was pretty good somehow. But I needed a new one. It was time. I've had this one for like 3 or 4 months by now. It's not new to me, but it is new to the stream. And let me know about the music. That's the only thing I could not adjust by my own, because I have it turned off outside of the live stream itself. It's just chill piano music anyway, so if you hear it, you hear it, and maybe you don't when the action begins, but I think it's better if you can hear it than not. And hello, Onari, good to see you. Music is very quiet. Okay, I'm gonna turn it up then. It's not quite for me, but I can turn it up on OBS. Is that better? It is relaxing, like relaxing piano music, so it isn't loud just by nature, but let's see what happens this game. I'm definitely gonna be a bit rusty, I think. I have been playing Smite off, like on and off, but I did take about a month break, I think, until I came back like a week or two ago. So I still feel a little rusty, but I started picking up ranked a little bit the last few days. I gotta learn some of the weird shit now. I never really got into the Morgan aspect. I'm probably gonna play a bit of this. See if I like it. What do I build though? I see people building E-Staff a lot. Maybe I should try that. It's a Bacchus. Might be scary if I don't go beats. I think I'll be fine after my first item. Or second item at least. Just that Bacchus aspect is so scary. In the beginning. So builds ain't my thing, but doing other OP builds. Yeah, I'm sure they're there somewhere. I know I need to throw in the shifters and all that stuff. For me, it's mostly about the characters and less about the builds. The builds that you can pick up on pretty easily, but like learning a new aspect, like I don't even know what the fuck the upwash aspect is. I just know there's ghosts that keep shitting on me. I don't know what the fuck is happening with that aspect. Even after trying it myself, I have no fucking idea what's happening with that aspect. Okay, maybe Sunder was not necessary. Fucking sundered me. Not really much to do in this one, I think, because this aspect is pretty weak early on in lane, I'd say. And Bacchus is definitely not. But he is a melee character, and that's one thing I do know. It's this fucking walk in the fate bullshit that's really good into melee characters in general. Just was I've played today, so from what I could see, you gather corpses and you should too. Okay. It's gonna be such an AFK lane for the first, like, 8 to 10 levels. I do not think I can fight into this, at least until I have my ult. That's fine, I'll just play it safe. I think this aspect is really bad if you fall behind. Because the only thing you rely on really is being tanky. Because but yeah, I think I'll be alright. Oh man. Didn't he have wall? Surely we just wall him and pick up the rocks. Whatever. We got the XP. This will be my first time building E-Staff, so I don't really know how to play around it. But I mean, it's not like it changes how I play, I guess. Just hit my shit. Okay, now it should be good. So people used to go Lifebind around this. Well, maybe that's bad now, since you kind of have to go for E-Staff and Shifters. The speech to text thing you have has a hearing disability. I mean, I do mumble a lot, so I can't blame it. I am a mumbler. Let's fucking center this. You also speak faster than I can follow? Damn. I feel like I fumble my words a lot. Maybe it's just slow. I don't know if that's adjustable. Actually, I'll wait. He's still ahead of me in XP, because I kind of keep having to give up these. Neutral camps. I still can't really fight him or brawl with him. I have to just always rely on my ult. I want to try and fight him. But he also used everything there, or his main fight ability, which is his one. secure those. Then I'll take my chances. If that's up, I cannot really fight him very easily. Just poke. Bro, what am I listening to right now? This track is supposed to be piano. Oh, it is piano, just as a beat. Oh, wait. This is not very chill, considering this is a chill piano playlist. It's kind of upbeat. Sure, I can beat some ass to this. I ain't fighting that. No, it's actually kind of fucking loud. I have to swap this. Also, let me know if the quality is good. As I mentioned, I put up the quality a bit on the stream. Like the bitrate should be higher, and the you can obviously put it in 4K now. Well, not 4K, it's okay. I haven't put up a 4K monitor though, but I think Twitch is a bit behind on that whole situation. Unless you know people.
No need for a spell when a simple ward will do.
An enemy has been slain.
Finally, after 2 solo kills, I've gained the XP lead. There's not really much to do at the moment. Wait. The Scylla is jungling and she's 4-0. Wait, where did my 3 go? The hell?
Your middle tower is under attack.
Ooh. What the fuck? What is my Thor just come and PM for me? The hell, man? Now I look like the bad guy. This is where I lose the thread, because what the fuck do I do now? Do I do maybe a kinetic? I think I'll do a spirit rope for now, because they do have a lot of like instant CCs. Like a potential Hui stun, the Bacchus jumps, the Scylla roots, that type of shit. Yeah. When we saw them on gold, there's not really much to do here. Like, why are we shooting on the tanks? I don't think that's a good idea right now. Very clear on this thing is terrible though. But I'm also just a full tank. So that adds up.
Enemy has been slain. And the rain shall wash them away.
No. Close. I don't think she dies if I hit the auto either. She would have been real low though. But maybe. My 3 auto procs might have been enough. I'm not too sure. I don't really think this aspect needs a buff, but I think it would be nice if the fire procs on the autos would happen on like buff camps and stuff. But might be too uphill about. She already excels in so many fields. Yeah, I'm just gonna get out. Okay. I mean, ways to stop over chasing on this. I've seen this happen a few times by now. Oops. Dude, this playlist is not... Yeah. It's not very chill piano playlist, to be honest with you. It's even vocals in this. What is this? Give me back my chill piano playlist. I think it might have gone outside of it. Let me see if I can get it back. Where are you at? He is pretty tanky. He shouldn't really do that much damage unless you're just letting him hit him. But I don't think I can kill him anymore. He does have very little cooldowns now, though. Much better cooldowns than I do, that's for sure. That dude's gonna jump 3 times before my 2 is back up. He's ahead of me in XP again. Let's back up. I want to get this combat blink online, just for style points. I don't know what to get here, actually. I think I'll just end up getting a kinetic, but I'm not really sure what else to build.
Your middle tower is under attack. Your right tower is under attack. The enemy team has destroyed the pyramids. Your right tower is under attack.
Not really sure. We're so split in these fights. We're not really going on the same targets either. Makes things pretty awkward. I think Thor should just land in the middle. He could have gotten a triple dunk there. I'm just being peeled off by a fat man. That's the tower gun. I really want to see if I can get 20 before these put this potential giant 5 breaks out. Let's see if he keeps pushing. He probably saw me. I don't know, man. It just feels like we always have people dead. I feel like Artemis should be really good into their front line too. Well, Shing is a bit weird one, but like Baku should just die. He doesn't even have beats. He's 1 HP, dude. I won't. Hey Hansen, what's up, man? Ult. Oh my god. I mean, currently it feels like it's just a case of our backline. Well, I mean, we have Janus, which is fine, I guess, but Janus is pretty low on, you know, the whole damage situation, especially compared to like a Kukulkan who can just keep throwing shit out. But Artemis being so much easier to kill than their Hu Yi is the biggest difference right now. Because I could just go and kill him, but he's never alone. He always has someone peeling for him. I don't think it's completely unwinnable, but you know why we're not stopping his back right there? Just gotta play a bit more patient. I do think my only target that I can actually go with is this guy. He's the only one who can get away from me. We can't really kill them here anyway, I think. Wow, look at all this damage. Nah, they could just be coming here. I'm fucking out. And there's pretty much nothing I can do, I think, to actually up my cases and up my damage on these tanks. What I could do is get a brawler speed stick though, so he doesn't heal as much.
No need for a spell when a simple ward will do.
Go away. Meat stick man. They really want me for some reason. I'm not really sure what the idea is. I mean, this just isn't good, I think. There is one character on the map that can kill this bitch. That's Artemis. And he knows it.
Problems are meant to be solved.
Why is Horus here though? Buddy, go help our fucking ADCs, man.
Enemy missing!
I think it's better if I can keep the Bacchus away, if anything. I think that's good for us in the end. But if Horus comes to me and fucks around with the Bacchus as well, it's real bad for us.
Prepare, then
Get rollers. I want to make sure we can actually
these were just lying.
stop the healing a bit on the Bacchus. He's healing more than you would expect. This should be good for us. Ouch. Didn't actually hurt as much as I thought. No, Horus, stay with the heals. I don't know why the Horus backed, man. He could just heal. Well, pretty good a chance to just get fired there. Yeah, now it's real bad. Horus dies too. Or not. I mean, yeah. It's cooked. Just, yeah. Really, really bad, like, people backing timing, to be honest. I think Horus just should never have backed when we're going on fire. Just heal up. If he stays, the the two carries can walk in, and if his two carries come in, we just kill him and chase him down. This should not be a problem at all. So, it is what it is. I do think there was a backline diff in this one. It was definitely better late game, but I think there was too many. I mean, 14 deaths is obviously just too many, but something definitely felt off overall in this one. Damn. Because if Artemis dies, we have no way of ever killing the Bacchus. But he was also just a CC bot. He wasn't really going to kill anyone by himself. I don't know how this happened though. Scylla Jungle 15-1. Oh yeah, I forgot to fucking fix the playlist. So that's Scylla. Probably just a rename. I mean, people do it all the time. Could be anyone. I don't really know who anyone ever is in the game anymore, unless they're keeping the same name. It's too much to keep track of. Let's see. What else could be fun to play? Does Rat get any buffs? Because when he came out, he was dog shit. I imagine that he's probably still dog shit, but I kind of want to feel like playing rat. He's probably still dog shit. I'm gonna pick it and then realize how bad he is, and I'm gonna hate my life. I have tried some Cocoon. Obviously not great, at least in high level play. He kind of suffers from the same issue as Mordred, where he has a pretty decent laning phase, but the second you run or like get out of lane and you start team fighting, he's just terrible. He just dies so easily. It's just so easy to lock him down. Like one CC and you're just dead because you have nothing else to really get away with. He does have a higher chance than Mordred though, I would say, just because he actually has multiple CC immunes and a jump and stuff like that. I do wonder what's actually good at the moment though. Solo seems very... less about the character, more about the player. At the moment. Well, maybe that sounds wrong actually. I think a lot of it just depends on how you play around it. You can pick so many characters in Solo and make them work right now. I didn't watch the whole tournament yesterday, but I was kind of checking it out, just looking at what people were playing in Solo, and that was like a bunch of different shit. Like the Loki aspect, I saw Cap. What else? I think I saw some Hades. Actually, maybe that was mid. Like the usual, like Osiris and stuff like that. Like it seems pretty varied in what you can play. Bologna. I saw Yorm as well, but I don't want to play Yorm. I might play some Osiris, at least in terms of ranked. It's probably one of the easier ones to carry with, I'd say, from solo. I think I need to, if I want to play something in rank that I could potentially carry with, I have to pick something that's good in lane and later. And sure, I mean, I could just pick a carry, but that's no fun. Sessions to Emily literally 2 days ago. Who's Emily? Why is it saying 0? Did it pop without popping? What's Pantheon quests? What the hell is this? I've done them, I guess. Or are these just the daily quests or weekly quests? Like in Smite 1? $27 out of 1,000. Be there any minute. I could also just go back and play Cuckoo again. I do think that Cuckoo doesn't sound particularly good at the moment though, because he is not a tank killer. At all. He is terrible if I meet someone who's going full tank, because they can probably kill me, but I cannot really kill them. It's kind of like the Morgan where last game, where I just had to keep running away. I could go Bologna. Bologna's probably a good actually pick to go with for carrying in ranked as well. I do think she is one of the harder ones if they have a good support though. If they have a good peeler, I'm just so fucked on Bologna. And I don't really feel like first picking it. Yeah, let's just do it. Fuck it. Roll back the cuckoo. Yeah, I'm kind of glad I didn't go Bologna. Kind of an annoying backline, I feel like, to run at. I might meet the Barkers again, though. Which is not too bad, I think. Trying to think, though, if there's something I can do to change the way that I build on the cuckoo. This might be a cooked situation. We don't really have a peeler in this one. Now that Gep has gone aspect. Which really sucks. Because it would have been so good into Fenrir. Right, so I guess Conduit still is the better option because it has mana on it. So it still gives me more power. Does any of the new items have a lot of mana on them? Not even shifters. I probably have to go shifters regardless though. Maybe I start with the shifters. Usually I would kind of start with a life binder anyway. Actually, E-Staff. Still no mana, but I think I kind of should go for this instead of a shifters. Actually, I don't know. It's tough. Because I do need some kind of defensive item first, especially into a Fenrir as well, even though he's jungle. But they can so easily fuck me up. 5 binder does lose value though into... Fuck it, let's just try this. Fuck it, as one might say. This is looking pretty rough already. I think we're gonna struggle heavily if we lose early game. We essentially have 3 like full late game carries with Kali, Agni, and Hui. Gip with aspect should at least mean they have a decent laning phase, I would hope. I mean, we could even count me as a late game carry, because I think this aspect is pretty shit in the laning phase. But then it becomes really good during the mid game and late game. This is a BIP game, though. I could see me being invaded. This was nerfed a while back as well, wasn't it? Not so bad so far. If I can get a gold camp, then I'm in a decent spot. Oh, okay. Okay, at least I get him. That's not good. Acne died level 1, or level 4. To Giannis. Not good. But I mean, I probably wouldn't have expected a blink either, to be real with you. That missed. Don't invade. Ooh, very close. We're just gonna have to give that up. Ain't no way we're fighting that. Like Fenra Baka's early game? Hell no. Yeah, I know this piano track actually. I love this one. I'm actually 200 gold ahead. He's zoning? Oh my god. Might not be ahead for much longer. And he keeps using everything on me. It does make it easier to just keep getting the goal camp. Yes. The melee's fucking juked me. I guess I still need to go Book of Thoth, actually. I need to do that second. Not an ideal second item, but it is what it is. At least it is a Bacchus, though. It's pretty easy to farm against. And that is all I need. I don't ever really think I'm going to win the matchup, though. I think by the time that my items are online, he's going to be too tanky for me to kill him. Might join the middle thing. If we even can. Fight back. There's no way that doesn't kill. That's insane.
Your right tower is under attack. The rain shall wash them away.
No, he didn't shoot forward. Don't think I kill anyway, but oh well. Would have been nice.
Enemy has been slain. All right.
If this was an... Yeah. It's just cooked, man. If that's an actual normal Gep, we CC him to death there. Like, no problem. This might not be bad, though. It's decent tower damage. Run, boy, run. Didn't kill, but I still consider this a big W. Fucking hell, man. Okay, what's up next? Let's go Genjis as usual. Definitely feeling the lack of cooldown at the moment.
The pyromancer has arrived.
I'm still hitting gold, but he's a bit ahead in FP.
Enemy has been slain.
Sneaky little freak. He actually caught me. I don't think he expected to catch me either. He didn't jump in time. Let's stick around another wave. Don't want to overstay. I was quite tempted to just wait for Genjis to be buyable, but I've managed to keep a lead until now. I don't want to lose it.
Your middle tower is under attack.
No! He's 1 HP though! Yeah, I'm good. Safe. This is where I'm unsure if I should just keep building the same. I think I kind of just need to, just how this character works. I can't really go for a meta build. What I could do is maybe go for a Reaver. But I'll have to swap it out with my combat blink. I can't do that. I need my combat blink. As much as I do like this character, it is so by the book. Specifically with the aspects. Bro, what's happening in left?
It is not yet my time.
Went better than I expected. Next up, we got Comet Blink, and I am not sure what I want to do for last item. That Horus is scary as fuck, though. I'm not really sure I can actually do much against him. But that's just this character in a nutshell. Lockdown is the biggest weakness. Pro Hu Yi is just getting camped by Fenrir, it seems. Like, Giga camped. I really want to see if I can help out. Where's the Baka showed up right on time. Oh my god, man, he showed up at the worst possible time. I should have just chilled out. If I didn't dash in, we just don't die there. Giannis is so fat though. He's level 19. I do feel like I'm doing 0 damage to anyone though. I feel like normally at this stage I would on this character. But I also haven't played it much since they nerfed it like months ago. I guess I do feel a difference. I just hate Horus with a passion. Character's so frustrating to deal with. And we're just getting caught. Fucking Bacchus, man, he's just split pushing. Making my life more difficult, and because it's a Bacchus, he can, aspect Bacchus specifically, he actually can split push. Just get a ward on fire. They don't have particularly fast clear, but definitely don't want them to sneak it. Dude, I like how the solution for combo blink was just to make it a bit more expensive. But I've seen it less, I feel like, since, so maybe it worked. Oh my god, how are we dying? I do not know what just happened. Everyone died. My ult is not up just yet. Why are you not going fire? What the fuck, man? I had an inkling they were gonna go for me the second I did the wave. I was just hoping I could jump someone. I shouldn't have blinked. That shit's gonna take forever to get back up. I was hoping for a fun little escape, but I mean, stupid to think that into an Uller. Cannot let them get fire though. She's just dead. Oh, Uller missed everything. He's dead anyway. I mean, it's kind of going as I would have expected. It's just based on our picks, to be honest with you. Okay. I'm just gonna ban Horus, I think, every game. I was kind of wondering who I should be banning in general, because I wasn't sure once I got back. I usually just ban Bestet, because the fucking ultimate late game makes no sense, but Horus just pisses me off. He's such a boring character to be against. He just sees seizure forever. He has so much mobility, he's got a heal, he fucking does everything. This character is so annoying. I definitely did not miss him. That's for sure. I'm kind of just going for desperate plays because we need something, but dashing in towards the fire pit was just the only way I think that actually goes bad for me before my dash comes back up and I can get out is if I get hit with by an Ulurax. I tried to juke it, but I think I would have been fine otherwise. And I don't think my beats worked. Maybe I'm crazy, but I'm a bit too trigger happy with the dash at times. I do not think we contest this. Unless it's already looking good. Actually, he's kind of low. That dagger user. My blink is up soon. This just already looks like shit. And he jumps the same way as me, dude. What the fuck? It's cooked. I mean, I don't know why it went bad. It just kind of feels bad either way. I do want to note that majority of my games off stream I won. But so far, these are pretty cursed. And I wish I could say it was just because we played bad in terms of our team, but we're just picking weird shit. Why do we have Gip aspect in support? I'm assuming he just forgot to swap and went AFK, but I do think this game was winnable though. I don't know when it went wrong, but we started just dying everywhere. It felt winnable anyway. Maybe I'm wrong. Where's this fucker? Let's get him out. Few characters piss me off playing into as much as Horus does. Aphrodite and Horus, I think, are probably my most hated characters to play against. I also hate Kukulin for some reason, but Kukulin hasn't been particularly good in Smite 2 so far, so he hasn't pissed me off to the same degree. I don't know what to play though. Is that this open, which I hate. So I need a character that at least don't have to deal with that shit. I'll do some Osiris. See if I can get a good game. Yeah, best that was picked. What a surprise. This does kind of suck though. I feel like I'm just going into a duo queue, like every single one of these games, which is in usual Smite 2 fashion pretty unfair, but I guess there's no other queue at the moment. Makes it harder because I'm playing solo as well, and they're just playing either duo lane or jungle and support. We're playing the easiest ways to duo queue essentially, or to win with. And I'm stuck on solo island for 15 minutes. Damn. It took how long? An hour and a half for me to start complaining. We're so back. Also, in 2 of those games, I've met Bacchus. Hopefully I don't fucking meet that again. I don't think I am. I think I'm meeting Thor this time. Fucking hell, dude. Why Bacchus of all things? He's just boring to be against. Though I suppose it could be worse. Damn it. I should stop complaining. Oh, never mind. It's a different duo queue this time. So, oh, actually, wait. So that means it's best at support. Xing solo then? Makes sense. That might be worse than Bacchus. I can never kill that fucker. We're gonna be staring at each other for about 15 minutes before we start rotating. It's gonna be great. A true Smite 1 solo lane. So I don't know what the fuck the Bested aspect is. The fuck is that? Pulse no longer can be reactivated or activated to its return. Okay, so it's a one-way jump. That's good. Hitting an enemy guard with grants. Okay, so you have to hit your jump on someone. Grants protections to nearby allies. Whip deals less damage but disarms. Okay, but disarms bleeding enemies specifically. Do we have another bleed on Bastet than your 2? Maybe on the whip. Stuns instead of rooting. That's the 3, right? Casual becomes Huntress of Bast. I think I've seen that. That's the one that just grabs you. That's the old ult, essentially. I'm trying to save Sunder here. The only chance I ever have of killing him would be this early. So I'm gonna give it a shot. I fucking missed. God damn it. No, there's no chance of killing if I don't hit my shit. So I'll fall back if the jungle might show up. Ah, no way. I was expecting him to do more damage. But since he already used his Sunder, he won't have it for the imps. No way I thought I got that. That's crazy, I didn't get that.
Your left tower is under attack. Enemy has been slain.
Okay. I'll lose blue, but I don't really think it's gonna matter that much. If Thor is there, I'm not gonna get anything. Guy plays weird. Let's get some attack speed going. Maybe I should get shifters as well. Don't think I ever bought that on the Cyrus though. But I feel like it's too powerful not to use at the moment.
Let's go mid after purple.
The rain shall wash them away.
Enemy missing middle lane. Cancel that. Defend middle lane. Attack.
On my way.
Out of middle. No problem. Attack.
Probably needs a Sundering, but I'll take the kill. AMU, how's it going? Going pretty good. Just relaxing with some smites. Not going too hot in terms of the win rate, but I'm having fun.
On my way.
Cannot complain. I'll just have to trade my blue buff here. That's fine. I'll grab the gold instead. I don't know if blue buff is still just worth fucking nothing, but it's just a trade I'm gonna have to make for now. He really wants the though. And he ain't gonna get it either.
Enemy has been slain. Go down. Be right back. Hasta la vista, amigo.
Just wait to see if she jumps on the red.
It's not good. He's just dead, I think. Deep was in fact deep. I don't know how they knew he was there though. String went straight there. Damn, that brought us back to being close to even again, with him getting that kill. Why? Let me get the wave, man. Oops.
No, go for oracles. Just push and go oracle. Watch out for a dual rotation. Coming to mid.
I think if Loki comes, we'll just kill him, but... At least it's sundered. Wasn't for nothing. I'm going out of mana so easily. I don't know if Bluestone is a good thing on Osiris. I feel like it's not really worth it. Just way better to have warriors going into late. The one again. He is wasting his ult on Gul'dan. Even if he just does it for damage, I feel like it's not worth it. Did he get it with his Sunder against my Sunder? That's fucked up. That is fucked up, man. Man, look at me being top damage throughout purely fake damage. Fake solo brawling damage. This is such a solo game, dude. I haven't even looked at the map really. Oh, look, it's doing well. Would you look at that? My Loki is doing good. I had no idea. Wait, did I jinx him? Don't die, Loki. No. Oh man. I mean, I guess I just cannot contest it then. Whatever. That was really bad of them to die there.
Xingqian and Disco ult.
The rain shall wash them away. Your left tower is under attack.
The ADC is coming.
We can fight those if they come.
Your left tower is under attack.
That's a blink. Not.
Your middle tower is under attack.
Try to leave. Thor's in the air.
Your middle tower is under attack.
They have better fight than us here.
It's part of them.
Your right tower is under attack.
It's like, what is that build? How is this working? I don't know why we're fighting this though. We really shouldn't be.
Your left tower is under attack. Your right tower is under attack. Your right
And then I did it myself. Just fucking losing away for no reason.
right tower is under attack. Enemy missing right. Your middle tower is under attack. Enemies incoming left. Go down. Power waves.
Got my passive stacked. My Shing is behind. This is looking grim.
Come on, we saw that coming.
Your left tower is under attack. Middle enemy tower.
Ultimate is ready.
The enemy team has destroyed the Gold Fury.
Why did I go back in? I thought that was a chance we could maybe turn, but I don't know, this feels so cooked. We're getting so shafted in duo. Like, how is that build working? I don't understand. Why is this doing so much damage? Like, what? I also don't really know how good the support Bastet actually is. Oh, this is looking real fucked.
We're one more. We're one more.
Enemy has been slain.
Is this shit invisible? Why are we scared? Oh, I feel like that's a free kill running into us. What the fuck is the Discordia gonna do? She can't do anything about it. She's gonna get stunned. Whatever. He doesn't even have beats. We just CC him. Right after my stun, we have an Athena taunt. And he just dies in that. But maybe I'm expecting too much here. I mean, they're gonna get fire. It's absolutely cooked. It's cooked.
Don't go. Don't go. Just farm.
The enemy team has destroyed the fire giant.
Leave.
The rain shall wash them away. Your team has destroyed the gold fury.
Finish this. Hopefully I'm tanky enough to be able to survive just a little bit. Also now just realized that I should have gone way more magic protection than I have. I'm kind of split on all my items, but I should have had, I don't know, something else. Because clearly the node will be the main issue. Well, or the mage, but like they're both magical, so I highly doubt full would be the one killing me most of the time. But, I mean, it's kind of too late now either way. I need to get shell last.
Enemy has been slain. Your team has destroyed a right. Your left tower is under attack. Your left tower has been destroyed. Your middle phoenix is under attack. Your left phoenix is under attack. Your team has destroyed a right enemy tower. The rain shall wash them away. Your team has destroyed a right enemy phoenix.
Why don't we get the Phoenix? What the hell?
Let's get Pyro.
Your team has destroyed a middle enemy tower.
Suddenly this is looking very good for us. Strange. Like, why does it take so long to get any follow-up on this? What the hell? Oh, because we're focusing Xing, I guess. Just like, right there is exactly what I mean when I say we can so easily kill them if people just follow me. Just run at her. She cannot kill me that fast. Like, if I have Loki with me, like, she just dies. I do not see any counterplay for her. The plan for this game should be pretty simple, but, you know, it's obviously simple for me because I know what I'm capable of. Others might not see the same. Like, look at his ages. Like, the only defense she really has from me is her ult, which just kind of prolongs the inevitable. So just get the shell instead of upgrading. I think shell is a bit more important. Or his Axe feels nice though, but it's gonna have to wait.
Enemy ultimate down. My back.
That disarm is annoying as fuck though. And I'm not used to it coming from Bastet. How are we dying in the back? Just asking for a friend. I don't understand. Like how did Morgan die? I guess she must have had not had no, she used beads. I don't get it then. I have no idea. I'm so confused. One shot by what though? Just Discordia maybe? It's unfortunate if he dies. If he lives, that's huge. Oh. Oh, they're both 1 HP. Damn, that's insane. I'm actually surprised none of them died. But happy. I'll grab this in the hopes that they can help me kill the newt. It's time to fuck up Pingu. I really want warriors before the fight.
It's 5v4, man.
Destroyed the pyramids.
You have 2 bombs. It's not that crazy actually that they got pyro. We'll be alright.
prepare the Athena ult just in case I 1v1, please.
Yes.
Let's go to the Aegis. She's 1 HP.
Reigns to wash them away.
Attack middle lane.
Enemy spotted.
Attack fire giant.
We should go FG, probably.
Just bait them in.
Let me heal on red. Let me heal. Let me heal.
Enemy has been slain.
Attack.
Your right tower is under attack.
Time for a well-earned rest.
That was definitely harder than I think it should have been, but
Victory.
well, we did it. We ended up 50-50 in EFG, which is not good for the heart. But it is what it is. It was funny to see how much damage I was still doing to the Discordia, but I was not touching anyone else. Like, Newt took no damage from me. She was so tanky. And all she really has is a little bit of lifesteal and some extra health. Do people build this because they heal? I mean, 60 strength is a lot too, but are you telling me this shit heals 15%? And it doubles if they're in the jungle? That seems kind of strange. It's a weird buff. I'm not sure if I really understand how that works. Because it's 5% of their health, so like, if you're hitting a tank, that's gonna be quite a lot. Not to mention you have a protection debuff on them. I can see why it's good. I'm just wondering specifically if those are the reasons. But I don't know, it could just be because of the strength, because I mean, literally nothing else, unless you're buying, you know, like the big avatars parachute, then nothing really has 60 strength anymore. Alright, I think I'm done playing tanks for now. I want to play something fun that does damage. Let's see if it fits. Ooh, Simpsons is back. The man himself. Could go for a hybrid Zeus. I guess I'll clarify. I won't be playing a damage dealer. I will be playing something that is at least hybrid. I'll only go tank if I feel like I have to. Where is he? He's banned. Then I'll just ban Bastet. I don't know what else to ban. Could maybe ban another support. I should have banned Shing, actually. I'm tired of dealing with Shing. That game was enough. I played Aspect Bastet solo? No, I haven't. I haven't played Bastet much at all, actually. Let's see. No, I haven't played her a single time. I don't even have her rank 1. I don't like Bastet very much. And I think her new ult is just cheap. I don't really like it. Like her new ult just plays the game for itself. I don't like it. Is the aspect good and so? I was thinking of playing something. Now I forgot what it was. Maybe I just play this then. Actually, I didn't press it in time. I wanted to play Thana. I'll do Mordred then. I might try a different build on Mordred. I've had something old in mind I wanted to play with again. Play around with again. Probably gonna be my last game as well. Oh yeah, I wanted to play Zeus. That's what it was. I completely fucking forgot. Yeah, it changes the old, but the problem with me is that you lose so much damage. And in like solo is a weird role in Smite 2. While being tanky is good, you need to have both. If you don't have a high damage output as well as being really tanky, it feels like you're not gonna be good in solo. And I feel like the Bastet aspect doesn't do a whole lot of damage. You have some utility for sure. I have no idea, literally no idea how much damage it does, but I didn't get the vibe that it dealt a lot of damage in that last match. But it was obviously coming from support, which is never a good indicator for damage output, but I might try it if it's fun. We'll see. I haven't seen anyone do it though, so I haven't felt inspired to do it. Usually I just look at what other people do. And then, you know, sometimes someone plays something weird and funny, and I'm like, maybe I can do my own thing of that. Try my own build with that specific thing that they're doing. Guan Yu. Dude, this is so... They have an annoying comp to build into. Because once again, they have a shit ton of magic damage. And especially on a character like Mordred, a lot of the good items for him have physical protection, specifically. It makes it a bit awkward to build into them. Especially into current ADCs. I really prefer running Nemean, but Nemean is not really the best thing to go into these magic ADCs. There really should be a magical Nemean, I feel like. But you shouldn't be able to buy both, I would say that. But I do think it would be fine if there was like an either or physical or magical protection. So anyway, what the hell am I building? Maybe just start out with the usual. Maybe go back to a Phoenix shield. Start shifters. What am I against? I'm against Zeus. Okay, well, that makes it weird. I'll just do this then. So I can have protection against both him and Loki. Man, Zeus. Shit. I don't like this matchup very much. Not terrible, but I like being the Zeus in this matchup. Is kind of all really I can say. I do wish I went Zeus. I really feel like playing it. Maybe I'll do one more game after this, depending on how this goes and how long it is. I kind of want to do a Zeus game. Maybe this guy will change my mind though. Oh, Bamstraw built. I see. He's going in for the long run. The fact that they delayed this camp by just a few seconds makes it so much more awkward to go for it. A lot of the time you cannot do it in time now. Like, getting level or first wave pressure doesn't actually mean shit anymore. Oh, well, it does, but it's just harder to utilize it now.
The prey remain close. Your middle tower is under
I just can't box him. Right there is why it's so tough to be against Zeus with this. Because Zeus can rely on autos, and Mortar's autos suck ass. They're so bad. Partly because two of them scale with int. For some reason. Still one of the weirdest fucking things. Oh, no. Oh, shit. I'll block you, bro. He might have been able to kill me if he went for me.
death is but a close friend.
Death is but a close friend. Fucking random ESET around the corner. Kinda shit is that?
Your right tower is under attack. Treachery is enemy ultimate down. The rain shall wash them away. Your middle tower is under attack.
Is that gonna be a Bancroft?
Ally has been slain.
Big fucking question is what I build here. I think I might just do this, because he's already looking to buy some... Yeah, well, never mind. He already has bought Bancroft. So just get lifesteal straight away. Game volume is coming through pretty low. Okay, let me see if I can fix it. Thank you for letting me know. Let's see. Let's see, it's that one. Let me know if that's better. When sounds actually happen. I do have a new setup, so feel free to let me know if there's something I need adjusting.
The rain shall wash them away. Enemy missing left.
I still won't be streaming that often. This was just kind of a potential one-off, because the game is still kind of... But I would like to a bit more, if I can find the time for it.
On my way.
Is all yarn get done?
Enemy ultimate down. Your left tower is under attack.
Ultimate is down.
I'm actually okay with him getting 2 of them there, as long as I get the small rocks. I'd like to scale a bit. With this hyper build I'm gonna utilize.
Have fun. Your middle tower is under attack.
I can turn it up a little bit more if it's still pretty quiet, and I appreciate it. Like, even to the people stopping by now, like, I really appreciate you guys stopping by. Like, I don't expect like people to stop by, especially when I don't stream that often. So I really do appreciate it, and I hope you guys know that. At least I want it to be known. Like, streaming would be pointless without people, you know, actually showing up, so... But with the lack of structure, I fully get why people wouldn't show up.
On my way.
But I do enjoy the game a lot right now, so... Still think the meta is kind of boring, to be honest, to me, but... I think maybe it's less about the meta, and the more I think about it. Maybe it's just more about the characters that are out. I'm just kind of tired of the current characters. I haven't gotten a fun solo god for me in a little while now. Granted, you know, once Vamana comes out, I'm locked in, but as it stands right now, I'm just kind of just going from god to god, looking for some fun. And it's not like there's no gods that I do enjoy. Like, I like Mordred, I like Hades, you know, whatever, right? But there's no god that I'm just like, I always want to play that. That's kind of what Vamana is to me. It was the character I could always play. So hopefully he's not complete dog shit, but I suppose we'll see when he comes out. Yeah, Vamana's never coming, man. I don't expect him to come anytime soon, that's for sure. I have no expectations, believe you me. Those died a long time ago.
Yes?
Your left tower is under attack.
Did they? Has it always been that low of a cooldown on that thing? I forgot. Soul main, by the way. I feel like that thing is always up now. What the hell? Gold cam spawns every what? Every minute? That's kind of crazy. Smite 2 has been like that for me for periods of time. Because, like, the game is fun. I really do enjoy it. But there's just... pretty often I'll just kind of sit there and I don't know what to pick, because
Your right tower
I've tried everything there is to try.
has been slain. Be careful middle.
Right now there is some new stuff. It just doesn't really excite me all that much. Like, I've played the Outwatch aspect like once, twice in a casual just to see how it was. I didn't really like it very much. The one thing I'll say I enjoy more than I have in the past is the Morgan Le Fay aspect. Because I didn't really like this when it came out, like, at all. I thought it felt like shit. But I'm kind of enjoying it a lot at the moment, so I might just have to play it more. I'm getting a lot of rocks. I mean, this is just fucking Christmas. I missed. Get in there, man. Oh, if Zeus is perma-rotating, I'm getting his tower.
The prey remain close. Your right tower is under attack. Oh, easy run. Hi. Your middle tower is under attack. The rain shall wash them away.
Oh, he's still same level as me, though. I guess he got a kill, so...
Your middle tower is under attack. Enemy missing left. Thanks.
I feel like Zeus is gonna rotate. He already is there. There's not really much I can do to help.
Your right tower is under attack. Enemy missing.
Need a little bit more.
Glorious power is mine for the
Let me turn up a bit more here. Okay, I can't really turn up the game sound much more than this, so hopefully it's good enough. Are they on it? No.
enemies are quite
Attack fire giant. Enemies at the fire giant. Enemies at the gold
mean, I feel like Athena should just ult right and help them, but we can get this. Should be a problem, but okay. I don't know how they got there so fast as well. Like, I'm so confused what's even happening in this game. I'm guessing they just have better players on the enemy team.
Middle tower is under attack. Your middle tower has been destroyed.
Like, Samsung is always just being super camped, but I guess we can't do anything about it. I feel like we should be able to when we have like a Thor. Like, we're just losing everywhere except for solo. Super fucking hard. Yeah, the Soul Reaver thing on Mordred is an old thing. I want to see if how it felt again. Like, Soul Reaver used to be really, really OP. Stronger than it is now. And back then it was kind of just a must to have it on any ability spammer. Now you can do without, but it is still really good, I imagine. Maybe it is OP, I don't know. I can't say I play enough for it, but... The only annoying part about this essentially means that I'm full int. Because the brawlers and shifters go for the highest stats, and by going Soul Reaver, it will naturally gravitate towards int instead, because it obviously has int on it. Otherwise, it just relies on your base stats, which you have a bit more in strength. We can't kill the Zeus, just leave him. We can't kill the Zeus anyway, we can just help mid. Like, he's full tank, we can kill him.
They're also all calling.
Your left tower is under attack.
I mean, they're just grouping and taking towers. There's absolutely nothing we can do about this. This is going to be a weird game to try this build, because... like, we're just naturally behind, and this build will make me so squishy.
Your left tower is under attack. Shut down!
I tell you that I was not planning on hitting anyone, but here we are. I was not planning on that. There was randomly an E-set done in the corner there. I was just gonna sunder it as a passerby and then dip the fuck out. But oh. At least we got a kill in right. I think it's the only thing I miss about the old Sunder, where you could execute, where it just gave you like 500 damage instead on objectives. It was a bit more fun to just do a passerby steal on an objective as Mordred.
Enemies in right lane.
I doubt we can do anything about it.
Good game. Bye. Retreat right lane.
It just feels cooked. Like, I would like to help out, but I think the best thing I can hope for now is Semsos getting more items. And then I can try and create some space for him. Because, I mean, the fact that we're behind and I'm kind of building something weird here means that I don't think I can really do much. I'll just probably just get one popped by any CC. But maybe. I can probably still salvage it. Like, I'll have a spirit rope. This can help a little bit on the tankiness parts. And they don't have that much CC in their team outside of the E set. They're just reliant on the autos. Loki needs to ult. Guan has to ult. In terms of reliable CC, it's not really that heavy on their team. Even though they do have it. As long as I choose the right moment to go in, I can probably kill someone without really getting CC'd. Hopefully. Maybe that's wishful thinking. Hopefully, at least, I'll be able to get some damage off. Before I do. I can try and save my ult as well in case I need it to get out.
Attack right lane.
That sucks that Thor died there. I think we could have defended otherwise.
Your team has destroyed a right enemy tower.
Come on, boys. Hello. We're not stealing that shit.
Yeah, Thief. We might not steal it, but like we should at least try there, I think. But he also shouldn't have died to Loki, just ult out. I don't care about killing the Loki. Granted, we could have, but I'm not gonna lie, I don't trust the Athena all that much at the moment. I was close to getting it too, but they did a good job of just not attacking fire. If they attacked at any point, I might have been able to steal. It's actually kind of big. It's a big ult to use.
Your right tower is under attack.
Okay. It's looking pretty rough, boys. I don't really know what to build. Maybe just go shell, actually.
Your right tower is under attack. Your right tower has been destroyed. Your Titan is under attack. Oh, they hit like a baby.
It's not bad. Good hold. Got a big ult too. A bit unfortunate we couldn't follow up on it. But I mean, this build feels pretty rough, but it's also such a bad like game to actually get a good feel for it. I don't think this build is good, but the game state definitely doesn't help.
Destroyed the goal. Your right Phoenix is under attack.
But see if I can get 20 and potentially get another item in. Or finish up my bluestone could also help. Suppose another bad thing about this build is the fact that I mean, obviously, I have more int, but that also means my 1 will do less damage, and my 2. 3 will be better, the ult should be about the same. It's back before 5 spawns.
On my way. The enemy team has destroyed the pyramid.
Be careful.
The prey remain close.
Not bad if we survive.
Your left tower is under attack. Your left tower has been destroyed.
Be right back.
Oh my god, man. Surely we can get something out of this. They're actually just free casting in the back. Dude.
Your right Phoenix is under attack.
Well, just, I mean, we're dealing with this Guan Yu cheese as usual. I don't really think we can do much at this point, this late into the game. Guan Yu doesn't have cooldowns, and no one around him does either. It's so shit that I can't believe this thing is still in the game. This is one of those few things that feels like you have God mode on. I don't like that they actually kept it. I don't even know what to build, man. Fuck it. Let's just keep going in at this point. I don't think it's gonna matter anyway. Let's get more int. If I land a big ult, at least that will do something.
Your right Phoenix is under attack.
I mean, I'm just gonna get ulted by Guan Yu again, and I can't stop it because I don't have a big ult.
Your right Phoenix is under attack.
Don't think that was a fully intentional.
Your right Phoenix is under attack.
Yana's ult there, but or Yana's portal, but I'll take it.
Move like a jaguar. Move like a jaguar.
Okay, well, it was good until 2 people died.
Your right Phoenix is under attack. Your right Phoenix has been destroyed. Your Titan is under attack.
There's just no way we win, I think. This is just a comp diff. Well, a comp diff and the fact that they got an early lead. I think the only chance we ever win this if we get an early lead. Maybe also a bit of a lack of a jungle presence, but yeah. Like my laning was fine, but I definitely felt like I couldn't do much once team fighting began. All right. This time, for sure. Oh. I mean, I hope I'm not against the same duo queue, because otherwise I feel like it's gonna start to get pretty unfair. I don't know any of my teammates. Let's ban Horus again. There's too much shit I would like to ban. I went from having nothing to ban to too much.
Select your god.
I don't know what I can play to actually win, though. I think this guy wants Ephraim. That's good. Then I can think about it more.
What you want, bro? I can't read the fucking chat.
I'll do a Thana game.
Do you want?
Oh, he doesn't have a chat. Oh my god. Does my fucking voice even work in this? Give me Thana.
What?
Thanatos.
Thanatos.
And then, depending on their team comp, I might just have to go aspect and go full tank. Or at least hybrid. We have such an old school comp. Actually, so do they. Odin Bacchus. Wait, what the fuck is this? I thought I was against Odin. I'm guessing it's not gonna be in solo then. I'm gonna be against the Yorm. That does make things a little easier for me. And as a result, I will not go tank. Maybe except for shifters. I might just have to.
Death awaits.
Right. It's been a little while since I've done the good old Thana. Wait, I can't go Axe with us. Fuck. Maybe I do Runeforged instead. I just want my first item to be... I suppose I can just change things up if my lane goes well, but I think objectively it would be nicer to have a hybrid item first, so that I'm not fucking over my early game. And I can actually fight in lane instead of just having to sit back. But I might not be able to do that either way into a Yorm. It really depends on how the Yorm plays the game.
I believe in you.
Because this could be a good matchup for me. He's gonna have a hard time juking my scythe, and I can interrupt his too with my silence. So I do actually have a decent chance in this matchup. If he lets himself be vulnerable. But if he's just gonna sit in the wave, I might have issues.
Have spawned.
Or not issues, but I'll just have to sit back. Give me that blue buff. I will use none of it. Could have saved my scythe. That was a kill right there. I definitely could have played that a lot better than I did. Doesn't look like my jungle's gonna be for the imps though, but their jungle is bad wall. It's tragic. No, I mean if we get first blood for it, I guess it's fine. Heard that buff pick up. Good thing I don't need mana. not sure. Like, the lane is going fine. I'm back. Kind of wasted my ult. Don't think I should have ulted.
Enemy has been slain.
Let's just do it. We'll do Jordan's next. Probably Crusher after that. Into Heartseeker. Guidance. I think that's what I'm gonna do.
Enemy missing middle.
I mean, I'm gonna fucking... Surely he gets him, right? He's out of mana. But... Fuck, man.
Sorry.
5 my ult. Would have been peak. Maybe I should have just gone for Yorm. I'm not really too sure. I was thinking I could kill the new easier, but I don't. Whatever. I don't really think I could kill any of them at the time. I'm also not really too sure why I blinked to get the rocks. It didn't really seem like it would be worth it, no matter what, for those 3 extra power. In hindsight, not the greatest idea there.
Enemy has been slain.
Enemies in the left jungle.
Enemy missing right.
It's already dead, man. Whatever then. Consolation prize it is.
Your right tower is under attack.
That's too bad. No problem. No problem.
The fuck, does he know I'm here or what? There's always someone here, man. I think I just need to hold on to my ult from now on. Because it's the only way I really have of getting away. And I'm just falling behind now. He's fucking 2 levels above. This is gonna be so shit if I fall behind.
Your right tower is under attack.
They do have a pretty nice comp for me to go into, though. I don't actually think it's going to be that bad for me, but I definitely don't want to fall too far behind. I think the pause is too late now. Bro is back. Their support is shifters. Great. He also went shifters. Shifters for everyone.
Your middle tower is under attack. Your right tower is under attack.
Budge.
Fabuloso!
Slain is just not really much I can do now. I fell too far behind early. Now he's the tank for me to kill him. Unless he allows me to poke, but...
The Pyromancer has arrived. Your right tower is under attack. Your left tower is under attack.
Go for the fucking rocks, man. I ain't dying for the fucking rocks again. Fuck that shit. Alright, I'm gonna get Jotuns so I can actually play the game more often. Then I'll get some pressure action going as well. Am I crazy or didn't Crusher used to have cooldown on it?
Enemy missing right. Be careful.
I can poke him decently, but he heals a lot. I guess it's just Chalice.
The rain shall wash them away. Your team
Man, just too far
destroyed
away.
the left enemy tower.
I want to die that shit so badly. This fucking crocodile, go away. Stalking me, lurking underwater. I'm still a minion? Fuck.
On my way.
Ah.
Enemy has been slain.
I don't know why I thought there were gonna be more people here. Okay, we're just a lone Artemis on this? Really? Okay.
Your middle tower is under attack. Be careful, Ninja. Your right tower is under attack.
Do not want it back yet. I'll just give up my tower here, I think.
Your right tower is under attack.
I'm not even really sure if I think pressure is that good on Thana.
Going for jungle buff. Be right back.
It can be bad, surely. He does so much fucking damage, and this thing has 25 echo on it. Alright, Wanari, enjoy. Thank you for stopping by. This will be my last game as well. I won't be sticking around for much longer, I think. It's getting late.
Okay.
And this piano music is making me so relaxed. Like, I'm getting pretty tired. It's good. Good relaxation music, that's for sure. He's laughing now.
In range, wash them away. Your team has destroyed a middle enemy tower.
I do wish there were more fights that I could be a part of, because I think I am strong. I'm just not strong specifically against the Yorm.
Enemy has been slain.
Get him low. Hit him. No, don't kill me, don't kill me. Red buff. Oh my god. It did 2 damage higher than I had left. I had 26, it did 28. Well, I mean, they killed both of them. Overall, a good trade, but I cannot believe that killed me. Piece of shit. That was good for me, though. I got the kill on Odin as well. Can't say this game has been going too well for me, but that was some big kills for me. I'm glad my team hit the target that needed to be hit so I could execute. That is appreciated. Oh, fuck's sake. I want to go further.
Your team has destroyed the Gold Fury. Your middle tower is under attack.
On my way.
That means Artemis is nearby, what the fuck?
Your right tower is under attack.
Why did you go that way? No. Link, please. Run. Run quickly. Where's the Yorm though? Okay, isn't it?
An enemy has been slain.
I fully healed with the fire giant. That's funny. I got the last hit. I was trying to, but it doesn't always mean it's gonna hit it.
Destroyed the pyramid.
Oh, it's gonna hot him. It's one of those really clutch things you can actually do. Just get a last hit on something huge when you're lowest Thanatos. Turn the fight. You used to be able to do that on the totem. It was actually really OP. Gave him so much extra sustain in lane when you just go kill the totem. Because that thing has a fuck ton of HP. Or it used to have a lot of HP. It probably still does, it's just coded a different way. No way he didn't die. Dude, I was so sure that he was gonna fucking die. What?
Wash them away.
Death is always watching.
This little fucking dingus. And I died. Get the fucking Titan, man. Kill the bitch.
No problem.
Alright. I'll end it there with that weird fucking game.
Victory.
But yeah, thanks guys. Really appreciate you guys stopping by. And yeah. It was nice. Enjoyed my time. Alright, good night guys. I'll see you next time. Bye.